this is Reality Check. Hillary Clinton is the most transparent woman she knows. She even said so in 2008.
I think I'm probably the most transparent person in public life. I think, 60 books? 60 books have been written. I feel you know a lot more about me than you know about anybody else. Much of it untrue, but nevertheless, it's all out there.
Sadly, Hillary's a liar. When news emerged this week that Hillary had set up a private email server the day before her nomination as Secretary of State and had used her private email address for her entire tenure as Secretary of State so that there were no government records of those emails, and that her aides also used private email addresses, and that her server had the capacity to fully delete emails, and that hackers could have hacked those emails, well, no one should have been surprised. Of course she did. Let's take a trip in the Wayback Machine. When Hillary Clinton was 27, back in 1974, she worked for the House Judiciary Committee, which was then investigating Richard Nixon. According to her boss, a Democrat named Jerry Zeifman, Hillary met with Teddy Kennedy's chief political strategist, which was a violation of House rules. She then manipulated the system to avoid investigating Nixon, hoping he'd stick around long enough to sink Republican election chances in 1976, which she thought would have let her boy Teddy into the White House. According to the guy who shared office space with Hillary, his name was John Labovitz, Hillary gave, quote, erroneous legal opinions and tried to deny Nixon representation by counsel. Zeifman said Hillary wrote a fraudulent legal brief and confiscated public documents. Zeifman fired her. He wouldn't even give her a letter of rec. Zeifman later wrote a book stating that, quote, Hillary Clinton is ethically unfit to be either a senator or president. Now fast forward 20 years. Hillary's the first lady. There's a big search going on for a memo written by a former presidential aide regarding the firing of members of the White House Travel Office. There's a little thing called Travelgate. Well, this memo goes missing for 2 years. At the same time, documents regarding Hillary Clinton's work at the Rose Law Firm in Arkansas, specifically her work regarding a savings and loan company run by the Clintons' business partner in the Whitewater land venture, and they go missing for 2 years. Then, in January 1996, miraculously, they appear. The Rose Law Firm documents magically show up. A White House aide finds them. In the White House, of all places. In a storage area, in the 3rd floor of the White House. In the private residence of the President and First Lady. And the long-lost memo, well, it just shows up a couple of days later. How miraculous. Hillary's lawyers said she had no idea the documents were there, except that the FBI found Hillary's fingerprints on the documents. Oopsies. Hillary is still the only First Lady in American history to be fingerprinted by the FBI. Now, all that was before the rise of email. But the Clintons loved email because it's so much easier to hide emails than to track down every copy of every document for destruction. And hide emails they did. According to Judicial Watch, Cheryl Mills, Hillary's hatchet woman, helped prevent the Clintons from turning over 1.8 million emails to Judicial Watch and Congress and federal investigators. 1.8 million emails. When a White House computer contractor tried to reveal this, White House officials allegedly told her to, quote, keep her mouth shut. You know that name, Cheryl Mills. You may remember her. She ended up being in charge of document production for Hillary's State Department in the Benghazi investigation. When she was Secretary of State, over and over again, document requests to the State Department were rejected because they didn't have the documents. Hillary did, on her private server. The Associated Press had a stonewall. So did Judicial Watch. So did Gawker. All a big coincidence, of course. It was all a big mix-up when Clinton hitman Sandy Berger stole documents from the National Archives and stuffed them down his pants as well. And now, Hillary has assured us via Twitter she desperately wants the State Department to release all of her hidden emails. We should believe her. After all, she's the most transparent woman in American history. At least, the most transparently corrupt.
Let's start with Mrs. Clinton, if we can. Douglas, do you think she would be bad for us?
Let me just correct you very quickly, if I may, Jeremy. The HJS is a cross-party think tank, so I owe it to my left-wing colleagues as well as our Labour members to stress that.
Okay, we give you the label because we thought about it.
you thought about it for me. The question on Clinton, you said, what was it again?
I can't remember, to be honest.
No, this is why you have to get your research right.
No, that's fine. Listen, just you open up on either one of those candidates and tell us why you think they'll be better for us.
I mean, look, the interesting thing is, as Sir Christopher, I agree with almost everything Sir Christopher just said. The interesting thing is that there are a whole set of assumptions that people, I think, make about the special relationship, which have shifted over recent years and over recent presidents. I think it's one of the most striking things, to my mind at any rate, in transatlantic relations of recent years, was that revelation by President Obama before the Brexit vote that Britain had, in his view, no special connection to America, effectively.
When he said we would join the back of the queue.
We would join the back of the queue.
That was a big moment.
We would have no precedence over anyone else, no preference, no historic ties would be able to pull his sense towards us in any way. There was no love, no even memories, particularly. It was an exceptionally sad moment to those of us who regard the transatlantic relationship as being important. Donald Trump has said something quite different. He said that the special relationship clearly is very important to him, but then possibly President Clinton, shall we say, Hillary Clinton, has said very much the same thing. As Sir Christopher said, the special relationship goes on irrespective of who's in the White House, but whoever is in the White House gives an enormously important lead to that relationship. It is the intelligence relationship and the military relationship that is most important. But I think that one thing that really has to be mentioned is this NATO issue. NATO is the basis of our own security in Britain. It's obviously a non-EU body. It's something that we're a member of, irrespective of the EU, and it is the basis for our military strength and our ability to project that strength around the world. To that extent, there's been a certain amount of disinformation in this campaign, I would say, about Donald Trump. I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump by any means, but there's been a lot of claims that he's going to sort of destroy NATO or he's undermining NATO. And really, if one looks at the specific complaint people make, it is this issue of Donald Trump, rightly, I think, citing the fact that many members of the EU, of NATO, pardon me, many members of NATO do not pull their weight financially within NATO. And that, by the way, that is not an unusual thing for an American leader to complain about. Previous American presidents have complained about that.
But it's an
rightly
idea
so.
that it gives him an excuse to do the isolationist thing, which is to say, look, we're not policing the world, I'm sorry,
Right.
Sort it out yourself.
Exactly. And you see, one may agree with that or not, and I think it would be a very retrograde thing for the world if America were to step back in the kind of manner that Donald Trump would suggest. But the interesting thing about this is, as I say, and it's been a constant in this campaign, because of the glaring faults of Mr. Trump, not to mention the glaring faults of his Democrat opponent, there has been a temptation to pick up individual phrases and throw them around as something they're not. It is a very laudable thing, I think, to try to urge other NATO member states to spend the 2% GDP requirement on defence, as this country does, and there's nothing wrong with, I think, trying to urge people to doing that. The manner in which he did it people may quibble over, but I don't think that this argument that he's fundamentally undermining NATO is anything more than a sort of Democrat Party talking point.
And lastly, who do you think will win?
Oh, I think it's certain to my mind that Hillary Clinton will win. I was in America again last week. If Donald Trump had played his campaign slightly cleverer, then it could have been possible, particularly in recent days when the FBI investigation reopened, it could have been possible for him to persuade those people who were so depressed by Hillary Clinton to instead of just not turning out to vote, to turn out to vote for Trump. And frankly, the jump you have to make to be so down about Hillary Clinton that not only can you not vote for her, but as a result you will vote for Trump, is just too large a leap, I think, for most people to make. So there's very little crossover. But one final thought, if I may. Yeah. People have been saying throughout this, and I think rightly saying, what a terrible election this has been for the United States of America, that the world's leading democracy could turn out for the final two to choose from, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. What a terrible choice of candidates. And I agree with that. But by the way, it's much worse than that, because as a protest vote, you could vote for the Libertarian candidate or the Green candidate, both of whom are tiny percentage points in the polls and have no chance of getting in. But it gets even worse because both of these candidates are totally unsuitable even for a protest vote. So you don't even have a viable protest vote in this election. And that, I think, is something that both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party and America as a whole really needs to think about in the coming months, whoever wins.
Thank you very much indeed. Douglas Murray, Associate Director of the Henry Jackson...
We will make America.
Him yesterday's executive order undoing a different piece of Obamacare was his 49th, not just more than President Obama, but more than any president in the last 50 years. Candidate Trump, you'll remember, railed against them before and during the campaign. He's resorting to executive action, as President Obama did, because of congressional inaction. Here to talk about it is former Michigan Democratic Governor Jennifer Granholm and former GOP Senator and presidential candidate Rick Santorum. Senator Santorum, is it hypocritical for the president to use more executive actions when he was so critical of President Obama for them?
The answer is, I would say yes. I mean, if you're going to go out there and criticize someone for using executive orders and then you use them yourself, then you should suffer the consequences of your previous statements. I think both President Obama and President Trump, as you just mentioned, were very frustrated that Congress didn't act. Frankly, I don't think that's a good reason to use executive orders, but both of them did.
But you support the ideas behind this executive order?
I do. No, I think what the president did with respect to suspending Obamacare CSR payments, cost-sharing reduction payments, was the right thing to do. Look, the district court was very clear. I think if they had appealed it up, it would have been confirmed by upper courts. There's no authority that the president had to spend this money, and they were held off, I think, as long as they felt they could, with a credible face that they're pursuing the litigation, to the point where they said, you know, we're not going to do this anymore. And Congress, you need to fix this. You want the money, you need to fix it. And what I think President Trump realize that the Democrats weren't interested in, are not interested up until this point in fixing it, because why buy the cow if you can get the milk for free? They were getting these payments. They didn't have to give up anything in any kind of deal to continue the payments coming. Now the milk's not free anymore, and we'll see whether they're willing to buy the cow.
Governor Granholm, I saw you tweet earlier today. You said, hey, at real Donald Trump, killing health care for millions of average folks, feel better now, privileged billionaire, happy to hurt real people. Isn't dismantling Obamacare, however, exactly what he promised to do and what people elected him to do?
Well, dismantling Obamacare and replacing it with something. So they haven't been able to replace it. And so what the effect of these two executive orders that he's issued in the past couple of days has been is to put real people with real pre-existing conditions or health concerns, their interests are completely subsumed by his rabid desire to dismantle whatever Obama has touched. To me, what he's engaged in is active measures to vandalize the health care of millions of people. So if it's supposed to go back to Congress, fine. We've got Republicans and Democrats who are willing to work on fixing whatever he's done, but whatever before existed that needed to be fixed in Obamacare. Let's get it fixed. There was just a poll that was issued by the Kaiser Family Foundation, and even Republicans, by a 5-point majority, do not want him to dismantle the Affordable Care Act. They want him to fix it.
Senator?
Well, here's what I would say, that we're going to see a test coming up here in the next few weeks, because these cost-share reduction payments are stopping. It's going to affect people who have silver plans. If you have a bronze plan or a gold plan under Obamacare, you don't get cost-share reduction payments. So only a sliver of the market gets these cost-share reduction payments. Well, again, it depends on what kind of plan you have. I mean, it could be lower-income people have bronze plans or less expensive plans. But the bottom line is that we're going to see whether the Democrats are serious about actually trying to do something. Because if their answer is, give us the money, but we're not willing to make any changes to make middle class, to use your term, to make. But it is what they've said, because they've rejected any type of flexibility that actually is going to lower rates for people who are out there on their markets right now who don't get subsidies from the federal government. You're talking about small business people or people who work for small businesses. You're talking about middle-income Americans who've seen their rates go up by double in the last couple of years. I mean, you're talking about huge increases, and nothing's being done, and Democrats are resistant in making any structural changes to Obamacare to make that happen.
You are not listening. I don't know what's in your ears, but you have not been listening to what Democrats have said. They have been saying, fix it, mend it, don't end it.
What have they
Let us
proposed,
come together in a. Oh
Other
my
than
gosh,
more money,
there is
what
a
have they
whole
proposed?
bipartisan.
What have they
There has been a
proposed?
bipartisan proposal that,
What?
you know, Senator Alexander and Senator Murray have been
I have
working
looked
on.
at that proposal
Democrats
in
have
great
a whole
detail.
list. Oh my gosh.
I've looked at that proposal in great
Democrats
detail,
have
and
had
there
a
is
whole
absolutely
list of
let the
fixes,
governor finish.
including.
Go ahead,
Would you
Gary.
just, yeah, including allowing the government to negotiate for the reduction in the costs of prescription drugs, including making sure that there are carrots and sticks to get more insurers into the market, including making sure that you provide incentives for more people to sign up. What the president has done has gone in the exact opposite direction. This so-called freedom you described, that was tried in a half a dozen states in the 90s, and all of those plans failed miserably. They were undercapitalized, and they were also used by ne'er-do-wells to try to put these scam subprime insurance policies on the market. And you're going to see, after this, you're going to see attorneys general across the country bring lawsuits. Why can't we get a fix? And Rick, you cannot say that Democrats don't want to fix it.
I want to give you the final word.
In fact, I can say it because I've looked at the Alexander and Murray proposal. And
I am telling you, they want to fix it.
Yeah, all I'm telling you is what the facts are, that the proposals that have been put forward by the Democrats have been almost zero reform. You've mentioned several things you mentioned are basically more money to be pumped into the system to bring more people in. But as far as structural changes to the insurance markets, so the people who don't get the subsidies are actually going to have lower costs, nothing's being done because that requires a change in the fundamental structure of Obamacare. Ron Johnson and Mark Meadows, two folks who have been working very, very hard on trying to put together a Republican proposal along with others in the House and Senate. I think they're going to be introducing a plan next week that has common sense reforms in there, things like that we're going to have prices being published, prices for services and products being published. Those are the kinds of common sense things they're going to put forward that can lower rates, and we'll see whether Democrats come to the table or whether they come up with phony reforms that are going to do nothing to reduce costs.
We got to leave it there. Have the Democrats come in, let them do it, because they were willing to negotiate.
Governor Granholm, Senator Santorum.